3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Welcome to the Joint City Council and Housing Authority meeting of February 18th, 2021. City Clerk, preamble, please.
This meeting is compliant with the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20 issued on March 17, 2020, allowing for deviation of teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide the safest environment for staff, council members, and the public while allowing for public participation. The public may address the council using exclusively remote public comment options. The council may take actions on any item listed in the agenda. Members of the public may view the City Council meeting by logging into the Zoom webinar listed below, and the City Council meetings can also be viewed live and or on demand via the city's YouTube channel, youtube.com/BrisbaneCA, or on our Comcast channel 27. Archived videos can be replayed on the city's website, brisbaneca.org/meetings. Mayor and Council, I've just been contacted by our broadcaster, and she said there might be experiencing equipment failure, and there might be technical difficulties for our cable broadcast, but the live stream is going on currently.
Madam Clerk, is the live stream through the same vendor or a different company?
The live stream is a different vendor. It's just through YouTube, and that's going on as scheduled.
And are you able to record the live stream?
Yes, we're recording as we speak. And so to address the council, the City Council meeting will be an exclusively virtual meeting. The City Council agenda materials may be viewed online at brisbaneca.org at least 24 hours prior to a special meeting and at least 72 hours prior to a regular meeting. Meeting participants are encouraged to submit public comments in writing in advance of the meeting. Aside from commenting while in the Zoom webinar, the following email and text line will also be monitored during the meeting. Public comments received will be read into the record during oral communications 1 and 2 or during an item. Kindly email ipadilla@brisbaneca.org, text 628-219-2922. Join the Zoom webinar with the webinar ID 95092445422 with a passcode 123456 and the call-in number 1-669-900-9128. If you need special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact the City Clerk at 415-508-2113. Notification in advance of the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable arrangements to ensure accessibility to this meeting. And if you are calling in to this meeting, don't forget to press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Thank you.
Before we start, I just wanted to let you know the only thing I'm seeing on my screen is a static welcome to the Joint City Council Authority meeting. I don't see anybody else or anything else. Okay, thank you very much.
I stopped sharing the screen.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. It is 7:45, call to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America,
and to the republic
for which it
for which
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tom, can I get a call out from closed session, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The council met in closed session to discuss items D and E. The item D resulted in direction to staff consistent with the agenda item. I should note for the record that the mayor recused herself from that item, simply a distance issue. The item involved something within a short distance of her home. On item E, the discussion was not completed and it has been continued to the next council meeting and will be re-agendized.
Thank you. Roll call, please. Clerk Padilla.
Councilmember Davis?
Here.
Councilmember Lentz?
Here.
Councilmember Mackin?
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Here.
Mayor Cunningham?
Here. Item 3, adoption of the agenda. Are there any amendments, requests for the agenda? And if not, can I get a first and second to adopt the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
And Clerk Padilla, roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Cunningham.
Hi, thank you. And now for the exciting part of the evening, we move on to item 4, awards and presentations. Item A is the Mayor's proclamation declaring February as Black History Month. Very proud to be able to read this. In honor of Black History Month 2021, whereas the City of Brisbane takes pride in joining Americans throughout the country in recognizing February 2021 as Black History Month, and whereas Black History Month pays tribute to the contributions that African Americans have made to American history in their struggles for freedom and equality, and deepens our understanding of our shared history. And whereas our diverse culture enriches and broadens the American experience of which Black heritage is an inseparable part as it weaves throughout our country's history, profoundly influencing every aspect of our lives. And whereas the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the founders of Black History Month, selected the theme for 2021 to be Black Family, Representation, Identity, and Diversity, which explores the African diaspora, the movement from the original homeland, including the spread of Black families across the United States. And whereas we commend the many achievements, successes, and contributions of African Americans in all fields of endeavor. And whereas on June 18th, 2020, the City Council adopted resolution number 2020-47, affirming the city's commitment to stand in solidarity with the Black community. Whereas we call on the members of the public to attend virtual programming and exhibits being held to observe Black History Month across the country, California, and nationwide. Excuse me. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 18th day of February 2021, the City of Brisbane does hereby proclaim February 1st through February 28th, 2021 as Black History Month, dated this 18th day of February 2021. Okay, moving on to item B, administer the oath of the office to newly appointed commissioners and committee members. Welcome, everybody. City Clerk Padilla will now administer the oath of office to our newly appointed commissioners and committee members in groups, I believe. City Clerk?
I'd like to call Commissioners Lisa Greenlee, Commissioner Kern, Commissioner Marmion, and Commissioner Sims. Can you please go ahead and show your video and unmute yourselves? We're also going to go ahead and spotlight the video if we can. See, there you are. And there's Renee. Let's go ahead and see if we could pin multiple videos. Angel. All right, thank you. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Renee Lee
Hi,
Sims,
Frank Kern.
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly
affirm
that I will support and defend
that
I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the
the
Constitution
Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against
against all enemies,
foreign
foreign
and
and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the State of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this
obligation freely
freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without
without
any
any
mental
reservation or purpose of evasion,
evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will
well
well
and
and
faithfully
faithfully
discharge
discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the
the
duties
duties upon
which
which
I'm
I am
about to
about to
enter.
enter.
Thank you and congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Too bad we're not in person. It's much more fun that way. Okay, now moving on to the Planning Commission. Ingrid.
For this, I'd like to invite Commissioner Gooding and Commissioner Sayasan.
And one more. City Clerk.
Commissioners, can you please unmute yourselves and turn on your video? Also, Commissioner Funka would also like to send his regrets. I've already sworn him in ahead of time, but he currently has an obligation this evening.
Thank you.
I think we're waiting for Commissioner Gooding. There he is.
There it is.
Thank you. Can you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I state your name,
I,
Douglas Gooding,
do solemnly affirm
do
solemnly
solemnly
affirm
affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I
and I
will
will
well and faithfully
perfectly
discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the Public Arts Committee.
I'd like to welcome committee members Davis, Grossman, and Salmon.
I got it.
Kindly unmute and show your video.
Can't see.
All right, I see.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
there.
All right, welcome. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jeanette Davis,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
To the
to the
Constitution
Constitution of the United States
and the
and to
state
the
of
of
Constitution
California,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely
freely
any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of
purpose of
evasion,
evasion.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
And that
I will well
faithfully
faithfully
discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties
the
upon
duties
which I'm
of
about to
about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Moving on to the Complete Streets Safety Committee.
Okay, I think at this moment, we can go ahead and try OSEC first because we're waiting for Committee Member Cabrera to join us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Committee Member Calms, Fieldman, Ebel, and Noonan. Everybody here? There's Jason. Kindly unmute yourself and please show us your video. Okay. Oh, and also I wanted to note that Committee Member Collins is also unable to join us. She also has a family obligation this evening. I've already sworn her in earlier in the month. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Barbara Bell,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservations
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I have vowed to enter.
Thank you.
Congratulations, everybody. Are we ready with Complete Streets now?
Take a look. Committee member Tainter, are you in the meeting? There he is.
Yes, I was waiting for you to tell me to unmute.
Unfortunately, it looks like committee member Cabrera not able to join us this evening.
Oh.
He did text me earlier saying he was online, but we must have lost him.
Yeah, he texted me the same just a minute ago. Strange.
Yeah, I could go ahead and swear committee member Cabrera at another time before
Okay.
your next committee meeting.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Did you want to go ahead with me? Okay.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Patrick Tainter,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California.
That I take this obligation freely
That I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
That I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties about which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, everybody, and welcome aboard. So with that, moving on to item 5, oral communications. Number 1, is there any member of the public wishing to speak on an item that is not on the agenda?
City Clerk Ibarra, is the attendee Corlin still able to make?
Yes,
public
hold on
comment?
one moment. Corlin, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Good evening, Brisbane City Council members. I'm Corlin Firebach, a resident of Belmont, California, and a former mayor and council member of Belmont. I hope you have had a chance to read the recent email sent to you by the City of Torrance Council member Mike Griffiths, founder of California Cities for Local Control. I am here as a volunteer representative of that organization. As you may be aware, the state of California legislators are increasingly their attempt to take all of our city's local zoning powers away. As I've never witnessed such a push to remove our local zoning power away from our cities. Just a few years ago, our only concern was to be able to define our own local zoning control and not be subject to RENA numbers and state bills. I know you receive a lot of emails, but please pay attention to the email from Mike Griffiths to protect Brisbane, your city, from losing its local zoning control. California Cities for Local Control would like you to join many of our cities by replying to the email as individual council members and to pass a resolution stating your strong support for local zoning control. Instructions are included in the email you received. The state push causes our cities, big and small, rich and poor, to lose their identities, and in particular, placing all of our neighborhoods at risk. Brisbane, and I visited many times, is such a quaint, quiet city, unique from its next door neighbor of San Francisco. Why do you want to protect your city? Because you love your unique city, your neighborhoods, because you want to protect something that you love enough to do something about it. Thank you very much for listening to me. That's it.
Thank you.
That's it.
City Clerk, is there any more communications?
I have not received any additional correspondences or any members of the public wishing to make public comment.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we move now to item 6, the consent calendar. Items C through N. Any comments, or is there a first and second to approve the consent calendar on items C through N?
I would make a motion to approve items C through N.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lentz,
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin, Councilmember Mackin,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
and Mayor Cunningham.
Aye. Okay, moving on to item 7, new business. Consider the sale of 4.21 acres vacant owned by the Brisbane Housing Authority. The Housing Authority will consider approval of the sale of 4.21 acres of vacant land owned by the Brisbane Housing Authority and authorize the executive the executive director to sign a vacant land purchase agreement and related documents in a final form as approved by General Counsel. The property is vacant, consists of 4 contiguous lots, and is located immediately south of the intersection of San Bruno Avenues and Gladys Avenue. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Housing Authority Board. We wanted to bring this item to you tonight to get approval of the sale of 4.21 acres that is currently owned by the Brisbane Housing Authority. You indicated the location of the property at San Bruno Avenue and Gladys Avenue. The former redevelopment agency of the city of Brisbane purchased this property back in 2011. For a price of just under $2 million using its low and moderate income housing fund. At that time, we had very significant conversations going on with Habitat for Humanity, for whom we have done other successful projects in Brisbane, about doing a project on this site. The site and Habitat for Humanity requires a significant amount of housing authority or redevelopment funds. The Habitat project would have been a low income project requiring the donation of the land plus significant subsidies to be able to get the housing costs to a price that could be affordable at the low income level. The state of California legislature and the governor back in 2011 took action to dissolve the redevelopment agencies in the state of California. And then when that was done, the property was shifted from the redevelopment agency to the newly formed Brisbane Housing Authority. However, while the assets went there, the previous funding mechanism was cut off. And so we have gone from a situation where we were, I believe, bringing in $400,000 or $500,000 a year for housing funds. That number probably might be as much as $1 million today of the per year if the redevelopment housing fund had stayed in place. It did not. We get a trickle of that amount of money now. So the ability to be able to do this kind of project on this site has not been something we've been able to do. We did have discussions some number of years ago with Mid-Penn Affordable Housing. They use a system of tax credits. They require extensive density. That was not a project that seemed appropriate for that site. And therefore the Housing Authority Board chose not to move forward with them. According to state law, we earlier this year, well, let me go back one step. We did get an unsolicited proposal for the purchase of the property. We went through several rounds of negotiations. Actually, we're in contract on one occasion, but ultimately the individual that we're working with in his partnership chose not to move forward with purchasing the property. At that time, we made a decision to move forward with selling the property. The state laws requires us to put the property out to different affordable housing agencies, as well as schools and different sorts of nonprofits to see if they have an interest in purchasing the property. We did not receive any from anything other than a affordable housing developer. Again, it was mid-pen. It was a different staff, so they took a kind of a fresh look at it, but it basically came up with the same difficulties in terms of developing it for an affordable housing property. At that point in time, we did put the property for sale. We had a realtor that worked with us to put it out on the market from Avanson Young. And this recently we received, the property went on the out for sale in August of last year. We received an offer recently, went into negotiations with them, and we have a sale price of $2.35 million that we are recommending to the board to approve tonight. The original purchase price that the city paid, or the redevelopment agency paid back in 2012, was $1.96 million. So we will generate a little bit over $200,000 when we clear through closing costs, including a 6% commission that will go to the realtors. So we've made a little bit amount of money on the property, and there are no warranties by the city or any guarantees by the city for any projects other than what it is currently zoned for. So the developer is basically buying it as is. With that said, I have answer any questions. I do have Mitch Cole here, who's been working directly with the realtor, and the city attorney could answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for staff or Mitch?
Hi, Madam Mayor.
Cliff.
So, Clay, if we go through with the sale, what would be the balance of the affordable housing fund?
I think Stuart's with us, so I think Stuart, it's with this additional 2.2 million will be somewhere around 3.3 million.
Correct. Yes, it'll be right around there.
Any other questions for staff? No. Would somebody then like to make a motion to approve the Housing Authority resolution?
Madam Mayor,
I have comments.
Oh, sorry.
I did want to acknowledge that we did receive public comment from Dana Dilworth regarding the Gladys sale.
Okay.
Are we going to read that into the record?
You could.
Tom, as I understand it, we're not required to read it into the record. We simply need to acknowledge it. But if the council would like us to read it into the record, the Housing Authority Board would like us to read us into the record, we could do that.
I don't think we need to do that. Tom, comment, please.
That's correct. A couple letters have been read into the record because they weren't available online at the moment. This is not one of those, as I understand it. It's available online. So it's the council's pleasure as to whether or not to read the full letter into the record.
I don't think that's necessary. Does anybody disagree with me?
Madam Mayor, there was a concern raised in that about proper notification. And I just want legal opinion that proper notification has been given.
Thanks, Terry. Tom?
Yes, there were a number of questions raised about notification. They've been raised previously, and I'm satisfied that all notifications were given and properly given. I also reached out to former City Attorney Michael Roush, who has worked on this previously, and he assures me of the same. So it's not just myself, it's also himself as well as city staff.
Thank you. Okay, with that, do we have a motion to approve the Housing Authority Resolution 2021-01 for the sale of 4.21 acres of vacant land owned by the Brisbane Housing Authority?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Authority Member Davis,
Aye.
Authority Member Lentz,
Aye.
Authority Member Mackin,
Aye.
Authority Member O'Connell,
Aye.
and Board Chair Cunningham.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to item P, consider COVID-19 business relief program. Council consider whether to direct staff to set up a program for business assistance for the mostly severely impacted small businesses on Visitation Avenue and the Brisbane Village Shopping Centre. Staff report, please.
Stuart's going to be given the staff report.
Do it. You're muted.
All right.
You're muted again.
There you go.
There you
There we
go. Thank you.
And I forgot to put my video on. I was so excited about giving the staff report. I just started talking. I apologize.
All right. Well, now you're rehearsed.
Now I'm reversed. On February 2nd, the Economic Development Subcommittee met to discuss a proposal regarding business assistance. Staff recommended putting $50,000 from the general fund to assist small businesses. The committee discussed the best way to use this money, and what they determined was that it would be for businesses that are gross $5 million or less a year. These are the businesses that least have the least amount of capital to weather a financial storm. They also determined that it would be helping the businesses within the traditional business district of the city of Brisbane, which is the Visitation Avenue and the Village Shopping Center. Their goal and what they determined was the purpose was to ensure that we did not have open storefronts after the COVID recession ended. So they thought helping those businesses was the most important. They also wanted to help those that were most severely impacted. So they were looking at those businesses that had a loss of revenues of 25% or more over the last 12-month period. And they also wanted to ensure that the businesses would be committed to reopen after the COVID-19 emergency. The amount that they had recommended at the most per business was $2,500, and this would help a minimum of 20 businesses. Since that time, staff also had an idea that we floated to the subcommittee, which was to create a voucher program for restaurants in town, where we would offer a voucher system where we could double the amount of money that somebody gave. So if somebody gave us $25, we would give them a $50 voucher for a restaurant in town. This would be a program that we would need to work with the Chamber of Commerce to best work with the restaurants to see how we can make that happen. It was a program that the Chamber of Commerce looked at a number of years ago under Mitch Bull, and we weren't able to make that happen at that time, but given the change in circumstances, we think it might be available. Since this time, the SAMCETA has talked about creating a fund for restaurants and breweries in San Mateo County and allocating money to the different restaurants. Last time they did this, we only had one business in Brisbane that was accepted within this program. My understanding, having talked to the Chamber of Commerce, that we anticipate that we might have as many as 2 restaurants this time, which still is not very many. Their program is for up to $10,000 per restaurant or brewery. So another alternative that you might want to consider if you want to help specifically work towards restaurants is to provide money to SAMCETA to provide money to Brisbane restaurants specifically. What the subcommittee at the time determined that there was a number of other businesses other than just restaurants that were impacted by this in the village and on Visitation Avenue. Probably one of the bigger ones might be the nail salon in the village. So it's really up to the city council to determine what the purpose that they want to use the money for. Do they want to use it for all businesses? Do they want to use it for restaurants? Do they want to target it for the Visitation Avenue and Village, or do they want to have it for money throughout the city? So there's a number of questions that the city council needs to determine before we can move forward. On the bright side is if we go along with the SAMCETA program, that would reduce the amount of administrative cost to the city, because we could just provide SAMCETA the money and then they can work with it, as opposed to having the city needing to have staff people review people's applications. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it, but I probably posed you more problems than gave you answers to.
Can I make a follow-up comment? So they said in our call yesterday that SAMCETA, basically people apply and then it's like each city has a certain amount of grants that are allotted for it. So like the first round, there was like one grant that went to Brisbane, but I think there's more money this time. So could end up being, there's like, it was like $1 million last time, now it's 2. So we could end up having more, but you have to have a full service kitchen or a certain like ABC license that designates you as a brewery or a winery. So fast casual like Julie's Deli or Madhouse, those sorts of businesses wouldn't qualify because they don't have a full service kitchen. I'm not sure, actually. I haven't inspected the kitchen at Julie's, but fast casual essentially wouldn't qualify under this, nor would like food trucks or pop-ups, that sort of thing. But what will happen is the applicants will submit their application and it'll go into a pool of other applicants that are from Brisbane. And then let's say that there's two grants available and there's 5 people that have submitted applications. They'll at random, provided that the applicants are eligible, they'll draw 2 names out at random. Then SAMCETA will approach the city of Brisbane and say, we weren't able to fund these other 3 applications. Is there any money available for them? And it's up to $10,000, but I do understand that for SMC Strong, everyone got the full 10,000. I don't think that SMC Strong did any partial grants. I think everyone did get the full 10,000. So it's just something to keep in mind that SAMCETA is likely to approach us and say, there are people who we weren't able to fund. Is there money to fund it? So we may want to take that into consideration now that we're creating a fund for businesses. And they're going to ask us if we have money to fund grants for businesses. If we want to marry those 2 things together, we want to keep them separate.
Carrie, do you have a question?
I just had a discussion, so I think when we get to the point of discussing it with the council, we can do that.
My apologies. So Stuart, what are our next steps?
So I think the first question to answer is do you want to allocate $50,000 from the general fund for business assistance? And then from there, we can then talk about the next step, which is what's the purpose of that 50,000, and then how do we help distribute that money? So the first question for the city council is, do you want to allocate $50,000 from the general fund for this purpose?
I would make a motion that, yes, I would like to, if we have the funds available to do that, and I would make a motion to allocate 50,000.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Wait. Do we have discussion on this before we start getting into voting? Because I'd like to discuss it.
Yeah, go ahead. I was asking for comment. I didn't hear any, so go ahead.
Okay. So I have some problems with this. And here's why. I think gross receipts below 5 million is way too high. I question that we're targeting just businesses on visitation in the shopping center. Some people are going to say, what about me? What about me? I'm on Bayshore, or I work out of my house. And why are they not being included? Thirdly, are these Brisbane businesses who have business licenses only? Are they Brisbane businesses who were here in January 2019? So we can look back at their tax returns or financial statements for verification. If you're looking at gross receipts in a quarter, dropping more than 25%, you've got to have something to compare it to. Why would we do this for someone who was not in business here? Also, I don't see a provision for verifying that they got PPE loans. Certainly, if you had a business up to 5 million in gross receipts, you might have gotten a PPE loan. And I think that the administration of this is kind of way over our heads. So I think it's a fine idea in terms of intent, but I think the execution is going to be problematic. And so, Stuart, you had mentioned going through Samsita. My only problem with that is, again, I think, are we just targeting restaurants? Because that's what it sounds like.
It is just restaurants.
Right.
Right. So Colleen, I fully agree that those are good questions for the council to talk about as to how we want to, if the first question for me is, does the city council want to assist businesses? And is $50,000 the right number? After the city council determines that, then the next question is, what's the purpose of that 50,000? As you said, is it just to target businesses within the business district, or is it to target business, to help businesses throughout the entire city? The other question is, how do we administer it? You're right. Trying to do it internally there is some administrative issues, but the recommendation from the Economic Development Subcommittee was it would be businesses that we had that were in Brisbane in 2019 and were in Brisbane in 2020, so we can compare either the gross receipts through the business license tax, the business license information, or through the sales tax information that we receive. So we could, what I would think would be from my perspective, is to take each of those questions step by step to see what the city council wants to do to make sure that we have a program that the council is in agreement with. So I think you raise great questions, and I think it's just a matter of working through each of those questions to figure out what the city council wants to determine to do.
Okay, City Clerk, do we have any public wanting to ask questions on this?
I've not received any requests to make public comment. And also, I haven't received any written correspondences regarding this item.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. We have one attendee. We have one hand raised. Barbara Ebel. Would you like them to make public comment now?
Sure.
I just, the only thing I wanted to say is that I do think that having a Brisbane business license should be a qualifying parameter, because I think it's really good that if these businesses are going to receive money out of the general funds, that they have contributed through the business license to the city of Brisbane. That's all. It was just one thought. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we brought that up in our discussions. So Stuart, lots of questions from Colleen. a lot of those questions were brought up in the subcommittee meeting as well. So given that, do we have any other discussion before we figure out how to proceed on this?
So I'd just like to say that my motion was that I would like the city to designate those funds if we have them and work further to figure out how we applied them and distribute them. I wasn't saying there wouldn't be issues on how to do that and how to move forward. But I think until staff knows that we are interested in helping, they don't have a budget to work with or, parameters to build particularly. So I thought that Stuart was trying to do a two-part question. First, do we want to allocate the money? And if so, how do we want to allocate it? And I was just trying to address my want to help the smaller businesses in town. So that's my discussion there.
Okay, so any further discussion on the motion to approve the money, and then further discussion later on, I guess, is where we're going. Stuart, Madison?
Yes.
Madison?
Well, we could allocate the money and then see what happens with the SAMCETA program, because that's going to be, the deadline to apply is March 8th. So we could wait and see, okay, well, there was a lot of interest and there's all these businesses and we want to just fund that. We could gauge the demand there. People just got around, a lot of people were just able to get their second round of PPP. So for many of those businesses, that's holding them off for, that's 8 or so weeks of payroll, or 2.5 times their monthly payroll, essentially. So that might be buying some people time right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then, to have like another round of money possible coming through in March, that could make sense. So just something to think about.
Okay, so do we have any further discussion, or do we have a second to Terry's motion to approve the money and then further discussion? Okay, thank you.
Right.
City Clerk?
Roll call. Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lenz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mackin.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Mayor Cunningham.
Aye.
I think after approving the money, the next question is what types of businesses do you want to help? And the answer is businesses that are located in Brisbane that have Brisbane businesses licenses. I think that's I think everybody's in agreement with that one. So I don't know if you really need a motion on that till the very end. But the next question is do you want to help restaurants or do you want to help all businesses? And then and from that question is, do you want to help, if you make the decision to help all businesses or restaurants, as Madison said, that there's a difference between what kinds of restaurants there are in town. SAMCETA is approving ones that have full kitchens. Is that the determination that you want to make? Or would you be willing to help restaurants that have something other than a full kitchen? So the first question, I think, is do you want to help just restaurants, or do you want to help a greater variety of businesses than just restaurants?
I'm going to just pipe in. I see, the really small businesses, the mom and pop businesses, not just the restaurants, but the small businesses I would like to see helped.
I would agree with Terry. I think that there could be very worthy businesses that are not restaurants. Anyone having to do with events and catering, they're just getting killed right now. We're seeing them go out of business. There could be more we're not thinking of. In the staff report, you'd mentioned service industries. And if we're talking about saving people from homelessness or being able to pay rent or mortgages and stay on their feet, I think we need to be a little bit broader net.
from my perspective, I'm not inclined to make provisions for home-based businesses. In my mind, this money would be like businesses that have brick and mortar storefronts in Brisbane. And you did mention catering. One of the provisions in the SAMCETA is actually that you couldn't have received more than $200,000 in Great Plates money. And I know a variety of caterers that you probably all know also that are part of the Great Plates program. And they're getting, I think, $20 per meal a day that they're delivering to seniors that are homebound. And I think they're delivering two to three meals a day. So for many of these caterers, they actually do have, some of them, obviously they're receiving over $200,000. Many of them have received a significant amount of money in county and federal funding. So while I see what you're saying, there are actually a lot of caterers right now that are subscribed to this program and getting paid fairly regularly.
Good points.
I would think that however we format this, that the application asks, what other assistance they've been participating in, how we verify that, I think needs to be sort of on a case by case of how you would document that and how you would implement the program. I mean, businesses that just had to close down and could not open, like our nail salons, our hair salons, things of that nature. I mean, certainly those folks have really missed out. They weren't able to go to a different method. So, there's businesses that are visible that we see, and I understand the bricks and mortar thought that Councilmember Davis had that is a good, starting point of whether they're bricks and mortar. But, we could have daycare people that, weren't able to be open and quite a variety of businesses that have been impacted.
I would think a home daycare, though, would count as a brick and mortar. To me. I don't know. But.
Oh, she's even purring.
I can hear her.
You've got one agreement with you, Madison.
Yeah.
The cat agrees.
But I certainly think that this needs more work on figuring out how to help. And I don't think that really needs to be done here in this meeting tonight. I think that needs to be either a subcommittee or staff working with the chamber to see where those needs really are.
I think you can also get a list of people who've received federal PPE loans so you can make sure that they're not trying to double dip, which I don't anticipate anybody in Brisbane would do that, right? But nonetheless.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I'm totally good with that. I have a totally different philosophy, but anyway, Mitch has a hand.
Yeah.
I don't see your hand, Mitch. Go ahead.
Yeah, when Stuart and I originally talked about this, we talked about Visitation Avenue and the shopping center initially because those are very those are tough spaces to fill once they're gone. It's not easy to put a new business on Visitation or in the shopping center for many reasons. And the problem is we don't want to have civic blight where we have just empty storefronts. That was the initial thought. Knowing that there are other businesses out there on Bayshore, at Sierra Point, whatever, that have been impacted by COVID. The other thing is I've been on with the State of California website, and I pulled a copy of their grant program, and there's a lot of things that are in there that we can adapt with. The applicant is going to, make tax returns available. The applicant's going to say, I've not received a different grant. If I have, we have the right to go back and cancel their grant. I mean, there are ways to do this. Some of it's an honor system, but somebody who is signing a document and acknowledging about 10 different points of what they are certifying by applying for a grant, whether it be 2,500 or 2,000 or whatever, you know, that's a legal document. We can hold them accountable for it if we find out that, you know, that they are double dipping or triple dipping or something. You know, they would have to have a business license as of June 1st, 2019, because, you know, those are the people that are in business that have been impacted by COVID. Existing businesses, not just restaurants, but anybody. And again, we started with storefronts because those are the hardest to fill in a community like ours. But I'm not limiting it to that.
Cliff, you haven't said anything about this?
You know, I think the comments that have been raised are great. And I'm glad that you pointed out those various criterias that we can evaluate whether someone is a good fit or not, Mitch. Those are things that you and I, Karen, talked about with staff at our subcommittee meeting. And so I'm just glad that all of you feel motivated to help our small businesses that are hurting because of COVID. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to come up with some kind of criteria that make sure that the money is allocated to those who are most in need, and hopefully gets them through this last, hopefully, knock on wood, patch of economic issues that are a result from COVID. So hopefully we'll get out of this next level soon.
Can I just say something about like PPP loans and background on that? So I've gone through the process to apply for a PPP loan and an EIDL loan. So I know how this works and what the questions that they ask you. And I know what the process has been like for a lot of our businesses. And I'm just going to use the nail salon as an example. I don't have a relationship with them, so I'm just using them as an example. But let's say they applied for a PPP loan. Most people have only gotten one so far. It's just been opened up to apply for a second. But initially, in the beginning, when you applied, you had to at least use like 75% of it's 2.5 times your monthly payroll is the value that they give you. So you have to, in the beginning, use 75% of that on payroll.
Yep.
But as we know, you still have to pay rent. And for somebody like a nail salon or a hair salon, they've been forced to close, but they're still required to pay their rent. And I have heard from, a number of businesses in town that they did not get a break on the rent from their landlord. And so if you're closed for a period of time, you're not able to make that income that you need to pay your rent, and only a small portion of your PPP loan can even cover that. So now what you owe in rent is starting to build up. You have that debt now that you owe, and you still have to pay your employees. Even some people used it while they were closed to keep paying their employees when their employees weren't even working. And so because we've been in this pandemic for what is almost a year, to think that somebody who's just received 2.5 times their monthly payroll should be good, businesses need so much more assistance than what is currently available. And EIDL loans are economic injury disaster loans. You have to pay that back with 2.4% interest as a nonprofit, and I think 3 or more as like a regular business as an LLC. So you're required to pay that money back. There is no provision right now for forgiveness. With PPP, there is a provision for forgiveness, but you have to show that you spent the majority of that on payroll. And so many people, especially like restaurants, they have these operating expenses. If they've been closed and then they need to reopen, well, they need to pour out all this money in product so that they have something to cook for people who come in that want to purchase. So from my perspective, and I know we're going to work this out, I think that if somebody's gotten a PPP or an EIDL loan, that shouldn't preclude them for being able to apply for something like this. This is so much more important to a lot of these businesses because it's a grant, which means they don't have to pay it back and actually has the capacity to really help them. And as the chamber, we didn't qualify for a PPP loan until they finally allowed 501c6 organizations. And that was just earlier in the month that finally our organization could qualify. And that what we got, that amount is going to make a huge impact on our ability to survive as an organization. So the fact that it is a grant is incredibly important. And just because somebody has received some level of assistance in the past, I don't think should factor in to whether they should be able to get this too.
So from what I'm hearing from the city council is that they do want to allocate $50,000 if it's available. And as your finance person, I truly do believe $50,000 from the general fund is available. We are having a very good sales tax year. We had our property tax was higher than anticipated. A number of our expenses are lower because we do have a number of people who we aren't employing right now because our facilities are closed. We have not filled positions. So I think the $50,000 is a very doable number. I also hear from the city council that you're looking to assist more than just restaurants, that you want to assist businesses that are within Brisbane that are impacted by this. What I could recommend is that, the city staff could sit down with the Chamber of Commerce to develop a plan that we could then be presented to the subcommittee. And then the subcommittee can make a recommendation to the city council. My impression of that would be going through that kind of a process. We would probably be able to bring that back at the March 18th meeting, because trying to get all that done in 2 weeks and having a subcommittee and everything might be a little bit difficult. If we bring it back at the March 18th meeting, we might have a little bit more information also from SAMCETA as to how many restaurants within Brisbane applied and what that looked like. So we might have a little bit more information on that as well. But I think that might be a path forward where you're not trying to develop every single item tonight.
Perfect. I'd like to add something about the Great Plates program for those who are not particularly familiar with it. So what the Great Plates program has done, and I do believe it's between $45 and $60 a day per person the catering businesses are getting. And for Brisbane, that Great Plates program has fed 60 people and per day. And these people who are getting fed through the Great Plates program must qualify and not be able to get meals through other agencies. So it's saved certain amounts of businesses. It's feeding 60 people per day in Brisbane. And so the win-win on that one is that those catering businesses have stayed afloat somewhat. I don't know what that looks like, so I wouldn't want to automatically preclude them from applying. But I think when we look at, how much is your business down, and we then evaluate, as we had talked about in the subcommittee meeting also, you have to be down, what, 25%, was that it, Stuart?
That was the number, and that might be one of the targets that the council, we may bring back. I will tell you that one of the catering businesses in town that is participating in Great Plates, based on their taxable sales over the last year, are down over 25%.
Right. So I wouldn't want to preclude them just because we've saved those businesses from going bankrupt. And they're getting, thankfully the Great Plates is happening. So I love the direction of this conversation. Thank you.
But I could work with as I said, I could work with the Chamber of Commerce to come up with a different set of criteria to bring back to the subcommittee for them to review.
I will say California's grant program, I believe it was a 25%. But what was interesting is that they took I think a certain time frame in 2019, certain months, and then compared it to certain months in 2020. And you didn't, I don't think you had to submit your tax return. You just had to say what it was. And then I think if they asked you for documentation, you could support it with that. But because I went through the process for the chamber, but what was interesting is that a lot of other ones will say, well, what was your 2019 income and what was your 2020 income? A lot of businesses have those numbers available now. And so while for the chamber, if you compare 2019 to 2020, like you could show that change in income, but just taking certain months. A lot of times, like if it was in the beginning of, depending on where it was in the pandemic and how seasonal you are, like for the chamber, we get all our money in the first few months of the year. So they wanted to compare the first few months of the year. And if you did that, you might not be able to get that picture. So part of it is also what time frame you choose to look at. So I'm happy to work with staff with the information that I have on what the other grant program criteria is like, and then, you know, to give perspective from the chamber on what I think would be helpful for our businesses if that's desired.
Right, and I will say, as a city, we have access to financial information through both the sales tax. You know, we have a company that provides us the transaction, the sales tax that each company provides us, plus their taxable transactions for a 12-month period. And that's a rolling 12-month period, so we can look at that. And also, we do have their 2019 business license forms and their 2020 business license forms. So we do, or what they gave us to us in January of 2020, what they gave to us in January of 2021. Because one of the things that I'm hearing from the city council is unless you have a current business license within the city of Brisbane, you would not want to have them participate. So that means we would have to have received their 2021 business license form already, and that would tell us what their gross receipts were. For 2020, we can compare that to what they had received in gross receipts in 2019. So I think we have that capability of working through those kinds of issues. But I think the real question is what is their, you know, what is their criteria for the types of businesses and how much we want to do for a business. And I think we, you know, as I said, we can work with the Chamber of Commerce to come up with a plan and then bring that back to the subcommittee for the subcommittee to discuss further and then bring back to the full council.
Stuart, based on the fact that we might have some oddball businesses in town that we're not aware of, I liked what Terry had to say about just, you know, keep it open and see what comes in. I mean, if you've got a childcare business that's down, and obviously we know the hair salons and the nail salons, and there might be some other kind of odd duck businesses that we're not even thinking about right now, and I wouldn't want to preclude them.
Correct, and but they would all have businesses. They should all have business licenses within
Correct.
the city of Brisbane. So
Yes.
you know, from that perspective, we would know their gross receipts for both years. But
Okay.
yes, from what I'm hearing is that at this point in time, the city council doesn't want to preclude any type of business other than I guess a more traditional home-based business where somebody is selling something over Etsy or selling something over eBay or working like that.
You know. And I think at our meeting, we are all precluded from this, by the way, and all of us have businesses. So just so everybody knows that. So do we need anything else, or is that direction?
No, I think I have enough direction that the city council voted to allocate $50,000 and for staff to work with the chamber and bring it back hopefully at the March 18th meeting.
Okay, so we now can move on to item 8, staff reports. City manager's report on upcoming activities.
Hey, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Ingrid's going to put something up on the screen. Okay. Go to the second item. There we go. So the COVID-19 vaccine information, the county has sponsored several first dose drive-through clinics this week. at the San Francisco Airport Long-Term Parking Garage and County Event Center. As of today, 53% of county residents 65 and older have received their first dose. More opportunities will be available next week. You can sign up at myturn.ca.gov or at smchealth.org/COVID vaccine. The second one, the San Mateo County Health, also has a number of interesting pieces of information about the vaccine process and questions that people might have. Second item, okay. The vaccination dashboards are available at the San Mateo County Health Coronavirus Health Data website. As of 2/17, which was yesterday, we had 116,000 or 18% of the county gotten the first dose. 39,000 have completed the second dose. And we have 717 Brisbane residents, roughly 15% have received the first dose. Just a reminder to everybody that after vaccination, continue to wear masks, continue to do social distancing, and to do all the safety measures that we have been doing over the last several months. Starting next week, the vaccination will continue with educators, law enforcement, food workers, as supply allows. Also, continue with the 65 and up age group. The testing dashboard that is available through the county as of yesterday, February 17th, the positivity rate for the last 30 days is 4.2%. As we heard on the county call yesterday, we are going to hopefully move to the red tier next week, where we must remain for a minimum of 3 weeks before being able to advance to the less restrictive orange tier. As we make our movement through these tiers, city staff will be evaluating our public facilities and hopefully getting to the point where we can start reopening things, and also looking at City Hall hours. We're cautiously hopeful that we can get back to at least some opening in the City Hall through in the month of March, and fully operational back to normal hopefully sometime this summer. So that's our goal. The local COVID-19 testing, this is the testing part, will be available at the pool. I think this is the third time we've done this on February 22nd from 3 to 6 p.m. You can sign up on our website at brisbaneca.org. Those for all people who want to get tested. More county-sponsored testing locations can be found at smcgov.org/testing, where you can make an appointment. The next item, this has been in the news quite a bit here in the Bay Area, and I think we've gotten some national attention. Just wanted to highlight that we have put out information condemning recent rise in violent crimes against elderly Asian Americans. Remind everyone to report any incidents of harassment or verbal and or physical abuse to the Brisbane Police Department at 415-467-1212. If you need a chaperone, our BCRC program is available to help out with that. That's at brisbaneca.org/BCRC. That's our program that we've been doing in connection with some volunteers here in the community. There's a 48-hour turnaround on that, so just keep that in mind if you're looking for services through there. More fun stuff, support the Brisbane Lions Club, and you can order your crustacean to go dinner by February 23rd. The event will be taking place on Saturday, February 27th. The city of Brisbane, here we go, I'm sorry. Please take the residential design visual preference survey by March 1st. We've been getting the information out to the community about this. You can go on to the link at brisbaneca.org/SB2 survey. This is to help create objective standards for appearance of new housing developments. It is being funded through a grant through the state of California. I know that we have received some comments and questions about some very visible work that's going on the Bayshore Boulevard towards the southern part of our town. The owner at 4070 Bayshore is conducting a geotechnical investigation to inform what can and may be proposed for the site. They received a permit from the Public Works Department to do this work, as well as the County San Mateo Parks Department for since it's in the HCP. I can tell you that when they were doing the work, that the owner had 2 geotechnical engineers on site monitoring and making sure that their work was being done correctly. We have not yet received an application. When we do for a development permit there, that would require the Planning Commission approval. It would go through secret review and would require building and grading permits before a project could be done. And with that, one last item, the Bank of America is, I think everyone is aware, is going to be closing the Brisbane office here on May 18th. Just want to assure everyone that we are working. Mitch and I have had numerous conversations about the city reaching out, and he is doing that to various financial institutions, including banks and credit unions. Ultimately, of course, this will be a decision of each financial institution. We are also, looking at sites that might not be the current site where B of A is, because we are trying to make contact with them with regards to their plans for that site. We assume they're going to be disposing of it, but we don't know any particulars on that. In the interim, we'll have on our website the locators.bankofamerica.com, which can direct people to where various ATMs are. And as I think most people are aware, there are a number of ATMs in private businesses in Brisbane. Of course, they're not open 24/7, and there is a fee involved, but those are other options for people to look at least for the time being. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the city attorney, who's going to give you a legislative update.
Thank you, Clay. As you will recall, last year, I'm sorry, let me preface this. The legislature's bill introduction deadline is tomorrow. We've provided a legislative report through last, I believe, Saturday's entries into the state system, and that is available online, and it's in your packet. I know some of you have asked questions about it. That's incomplete. We'll know a lot more by next week sometime. It usually takes, there's a bit of a lag between bills being introduced, which will be again tomorrow, and getting fully into the system, and we can pick them up. So at the next meeting, you'll have a fuller report. In the interim, the city has been approached, as was discussed in public comment earlier, about some housing measures that are continuing the trend of the legislature's interest, at least in the Senate, of legislating to have a more state-determined zoning and planning policy when it comes to housing than local discretion. I don't know if the former Belmont mayor is still there. I looked and I could not tell, but if she is not, I will just preface this to say that the city has heard from a number of advocates, including herself, all on behalf of cities who are interested in seeing the city get involved in opposing some of these measures. And I will touch on two of those that are being, I think that cities will largely oppose, small cities. So as you may recall, the infamous bill in the last couple of years was SB 50 by Senator Wiener out of San Francisco. It was a sweeping measure. It did not get out of the legislature. There were multiple efforts. There was a great deal of consternation around the measure on both sides, both those for it and those against it. From a local government point of view, it would have really changed dramatically for a second time in less than 3 years, the laws that govern how housing would be cited and under what limits the city could place on them. It would have been even more landmark than the reforms that Governor Brown put in place in, I believe, 2017. That last year, SB 50's failure spawned a whole series of bills. Most of them failed. This year, those same bills are coming back, and that's what I would like to address tonight. Two of them are measures that you've seen before or largely seen before. SB 9, which is being carried by the Senate Pro Tem. Senate Pro Tem is Tony Atkins out of San Diego, most powerful senator, obviously. She carried a bill last year, SB 1120. It did not make it out of the legislature. It's pretty rare for the president of the Senate with a supermajority Democratic control of both houses to not get her bill out. Tells you how controversial it was. The bill 1120 would have, and now this year SB 9 would streamline the process for property owners to split their lots for duplex projects. The bill has been double referred this year to the Senate Housing and Governance and Finance Committees. That is important. Due to COVID last year, bills went to a single committee. There was not the time to have what is the normal course, which is 2 policy committee hearings, sometimes 3. And that creates the more hearings, the greater the scrutiny on the bill. And of course, you can almost always double. So if there's 2 in the Senate, there's going to be 4 total policy hearings. All that being said, the legislature has done 3 things that cut against adding in the restoring the policy committee review. One is it has changed the 30-day in print requirement, which is a standard that the legislature has had for many decades, to a the final number needs to be determined, but the Senate is going to essentially have it. So a bill can be in print and not give the public notice of more than a couple of weeks, whereas right now they have a month's notice before any action could be taken on it. So that's one reform that the Senate will vote on Monday, and that's relevant to a bill like this. That's why I'm bringing it up. A second reform is how the committee membership will be lobbied. It will still be remotely, and with the problems in the Capitol last year related to the pandemic, notwithstanding the vaccinations and the improved testing, et cetera, you will still have very limited ability to get to your legislator unless you've scheduled a Zoom call to lobby. So against that backdrop, you have a lot of local interests very concerned that a bill like this could move swiftly, not have a chance to be heard, and they are therefore asking that local governments consider submitting formal letters of opposition. Brisbane has, by tradition, occasionally written letters of opposition, but often has directed council in Sacramento to actively oppose or oppose with an intent to amend legislation like this. This year, because of the changing rules that we expect to be adopted next week, we would recommend that staff proceed with an actual formal letter of opposition. That doesn't take a council vote, but it's our recommendation. So with all of that as the backdrop, you have SB 9, which you heard about last year as SB 1120. That's the duplex bill. The other one that is very near and dear to this council's heart is SB 10, authored by Senator Wiener. This is the same bill as SB 902, which some of you may remember from last year. This is the one that would allow for upzoning through operation of the state law around transit and job centers. Remember trying to define what a job center was, and it would allow up to 10 units per parcel. So this one's also particularly controversial. There's a whole string of these, but those are the two that have gotten the most attention, and I would just say rightfully so, in my judgment. And we would recommend that the staff proceed to submit letters of opposition to both. One last point, the League of Cities did not take a position in opposition to these sister measures last year. It didn't do that because of other factors that are not relevant to Brisbane. And we suspect that the same thing may happen this year. So you may recall that at one meeting last year, when the council was taking a position or discussing taking a position in opposition to a housing measure, somebody commented that, well, why would you go against the league? You're not going against the league. The league's neutral. It's neither endorsing nor opposing. It's just silent. And that's what it does when it has members on both sides of an issue. I fully expect the league will be silent again, at least on SB 9 and SB 10. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and sorry for the long introduction, but there's been a lot of rule changes.
Any
So,
questions for Tom?
yeah, I do. So I'm sure you've been involved with the council from Torrance, or you've seen their letters, and I did get a call from his assistant today asking about either signing on as a person or signing on as a council. Do you have any recommendation on that action?
I recommend that you do sign on. I would do it as a city, not as an individual personally. There is one note I should make. The concentration of attention on the where that opposition is coming from has been Southern California, and that's simply because it grew out of an Orange County. I believe it was Anaheim, but don't hold me to that. It grew out of Orange County-based cities. It then moved into the LA County cities, such as Torrance, and it hasn't made its way all the way north. I want to say Santa Maria might be the farthest north, but I only bring it up to say that I got that question, and I think that's just because it's a local grassroots efforts by smaller cities to be heard, and it just didn't make its way up during the pandemic. So it's here now, and I encourage the city to join its other city brethren who are like-minded and similarly situated and oppose these measures.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Tom? Colleen?
Tom, have you heard, I think this is something that was put out by Livable California, about some bill that the governor is apparently trying to push to monitor city council meetings?
That is not the bill I thought you were going to ask me about, Colleen. No, Colleen, I have not. That's not true. I have heard a rumor this morning of such a bill. I don't want to comment further. I'll get back to you. I believe what it actually is a monitoring of local government activity on housing as opposed to city council meetings.
Yes.
That being said, I haven't seen it in print. That doesn't mean it's not in print. I did not. I asked Delilah. We were distracted today, Clay and I, by some other things for the city. And I did not reach out to her. I didn't have time before the meeting tonight to ask her if there was anything else introduced. So there may be something in print. If there is, we'll get it to you tomorrow. If there isn't, we'll certainly watch for it after the deadline. But what I heard from a single source was a monitoring of housing actions by local government.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Tom? Looks like you're off the hook, Tom. Okay, so moving on now to item 9, mayor and council matters, countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. Who would like to start? I nominate Colleen.
Okay, thanks. Karen, you're on some of these. I don't know if you want to pipe in, but I'll just start. January 26th, we had an infrastructure, utilities, and franchise subcommittee talking about State Bill 1383, state mandate to reduce organic waste and divert it from landfills. And it was noted we already have green bins programs in place where some cities in California do not, but with South City Scavenger, we do. But this bill will now mandate businesses have to participate. And the bill has a further mandate that businesses will participate in an edible food recovery program. So that would be any kind of food service type manufacturer, could be restaurants. And of course, it brought the question of how do you actually implement that? And staff is going to work with the county on that. We agreed to roll out the new requirements with 1 year of education before any enforcement, and there are enforcement provisions that are mandated. We also discussed the need for water and wastewater rate study, and requests for proposals have been sent out. The last operational rate increase was 2012. The rate changes will be made to pay for water and wastewater capital improvement plan. And that plan will be to sell bonds every 5 years over 20 years. Then on January 28th, I had a Peninsula Clean Energy meeting. The big news there is that the Peninsula Clean Energy voted unanimously to join a California Community Power JPA. And this is anticipated to have 8 to 9 members consisting of other clean energy consortiums from around the state. This will benefit all members in joint procurement of power, storage, and reliability 24/7 with clean energy. Another benefit we'll be adding is more strategic, legislative, and regulatory benefits. And probably the most impressive is it's now anticipated that this new JPA could end up as large in scale as PG&E itself. Then on February 10, we had a planning issues subcommittee. And Karen, you want to do this or you want me to keep going? Okay. Staff updated the committee about working with host compliance. It's the STR, which is short-term rental specific service that we contracted with to perform STR monitoring and tracking, permitting, and tax collection. And it's anticipated that the program could go live in implementation in about 4 to 6 weeks. And there will be notices in the city media about any upcoming enforcement. And finally, February 16, Madison, you want to do 2 by 2 or you want me to keep going?
You can keep going.
Okay. Our meeting was kind of a meet and greet for newly elected members who took office in 2021. We also discussed the cooperative agreement between the City of Brisbane and the Brisbane School District regarding shared use of public facilities and programs. And we're reviewing that and we'll make proposals on any necessary amendments for continuation in the future. That's all I've got.
Thanks. Terry, do you want to go next?
I was actually looking, and I think other than the planning or the infrastructure subcommittee, the only other meeting that I had was with the airport land use committee. And interestingly enough, the 2 projects on that that we had denied because they did not meet the protocols for being approved, mostly because of noise and safety, noise from the runways and overflights, and for safety reasons, both those both of those city councils unanimously voted to overturn those denials. And so under the terms, they can do that. It just puts more liability on those communities if there were to be a problem. So just goes to show that sometimes rules are done in vain, but we keep persevering on that.
Okay,
And that's about it.
Cliff.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we had a couple of subcommittees meetings. Karen, did you want to go over them, or do you want me to do it?
Well, we covered the economic development basically tonight, so that's one of them that we did. Do you want to go over the Baylands subcommittee meeting from this morning?
Okay, so so we had a meeting with Greg Vilkin and a couple of his associates, and of course our staff, and our planning commissioner Sasane, is that how you pronounce it? Sayasan, sorry about that. I just call her Pamela, so Sayasan. And we were hoping to receive the 3D model from them, from BDI, but they just explained why it's taking a little bit longer than they first initiated. It would take, because there's just a lot of data that they have to collect, and they wound up hiring a new architecture firm. They're still using the same consultants that they've had from the workshops, but they've hired Gensler to help them with those technical capabilities of creating the 3D model. And so they also laid out a series of milestones that they hope to achieve. And so we should be getting that 3D model next month at our next meeting. They also said that that they'd have their specific plan ready by April 26th, and we thought that was pretty aggressive. But there's some other steps that of course need to happen prior to that, and we let them know that we'll be bringing on new members from our advisory groups as part of our Bayland subcommittee, so that we can provide more input from different perspectives that are from our city in the discussions. So I don't know, and then Karen, I thought you had a great comment about just adding in the things into the model that are really important for our constituents. And I'll let you talk about that.
Sure. So part of my thought process when we were going through this conversation this morning was, being proactive rather than reactive, and getting BDI to bring information forward faster. So we're not, here's a plan and then we pick it apart, draw it down, start all over again. So if we're talking about roads, that all the information they've got on roads, they bring forward. And for example, the thing that we were talking about this morning was, where are they getting their water from? And just the process of how they're approaching different agencies and different jurisdictions and different entities to get water was quite fascinating to me. I didn't realize that it was that many different places you could ask for water. And if certain water allotments were made to a certain city, that, we could ask for water that wasn't being used. So it was interesting. And I thought, if they can bring that stuff forward to the community can do their own research on what they like or dislike about a particular topic. So I thought that was something, and they were open to bringing information to us sooner rather than later. So that was my 2 cents on that whole thing. Did you have any other subcommittees?
I had a community.org meeting this morning.
commute.org goes dark for 3 months during the winter. And so we had a great presentation from the Express Lane project team. That project along the 101 is moving at a pretty good clip, and should reduce a significant amount of traffic congestion on the 101. It's also expected to raise a significant amount of money, and that was kind of like the big item of discussion in regards to that project. And it's about equity, and of course not only can commuters who are carpooling use it, but then also single occupancy vehicles too, if they're willing to pay, and that the lane is open for having a 45 mile per hour flow of traffic. And so a lot of talk about, well, hey, if you're gonna charge these people that can afford it, maybe investing that money into low income communities to improve their local transportation capabilities. So that was pretty cool.
Anything else?
That is it.
Okay, Madison.
I think I just had that meeting with Colleen. The other meeting I had was with Cliff and Clay and Stuart and Lisa Macias, but I think that we might have reported out on that at the last meeting.
Yeah, it wasn't on our list. So I wrote it down and I thought, oh, I guess it would be on the list here. So maybe we did report it out the last time.
Is the list in our physical packet? Because I don't remember seeing it.
It was an email, I think it was from Angel.
I saw that come in, but I didn't.
It wasn't an official subcommittee meeting, so it's not listed. It was just a meeting.
Is there anything, because I don't have it in front of me, Angel, that was on that list that I don't know about, that I need to report out on that I forgot?
Nope, you did not.
That's it.
Okay. So my list was long, but most of it's been covered already. So the planning issues, economic development, Bayland Subcommittee. I'm also on the JPA for the San Mateo County Library System and the Foundation for San Mateo County Libraries, the foundation being the fundraising arm of the library system, and the JPA, well, as we know, building libraries and building library communities. It's going to be so great when our library finally opens. And what I've been encouraging the board to do is really reach out into the communities and let people know how many different things are actually going on at the library now that weren't even 5 or 10 years ago. And there's a phenomenal amount of work they've been doing remotely. It's just totally blown me away, the library staff and the work that they've been doing and the things that they're going to be bringing forward, moving forward. So, I hope that's encouraging when we start opening up, that, people are going to have all these great things to do at the library, physically at the library. I'm also on CCAG, and I was elected to the legislative board of CCAG, which means I will be monitoring all of these bills with Tom. No, not with Tom, with them. And I brought to Clay's attention how alarming I felt about SB 9 and 10. And at my first legislative meeting, I unequivocally said that I would not support either of those bills without significant changes to the bills. And there's a lot of bills in a packet I have that I'll probably give to Clay to distribute, about some of the things that look like they could be alarming to all of us moving forward. And there seems to be a massive overreach from the state that I'm hoping we can fend off. And I'll list out some of the things that were brought up as items of concern. But I'm pretty excited to be on the legislative board, because they're bringing those things in really early in the game for us to have a look at and and see if it sort of sets off any alarm bells for us to send over Tom's way to have a look at. So I think that's enough. There were like 8 things in the last month that I attended. So yeah, I don't have anything else. So now we can move on to item S, City Council meeting schedule. The next City Council meeting is scheduled for March 4th, 2021. So if, oh, there it is. Okay, great. And, oh yes, the written correspondences. Do you want me to read through those?
Mayor Cunningham, so the next scheduled meeting is going to be March 4th.
Yes.
And I also wanted to, again, reiterate our apologies for the technical difficulties in our cable broadcast, and we hope to rebroadcast the meeting and play back the video starting tomorrow evening and throughout the weekend.
Okay. So for people who were watching tonight, they just heard the meeting, they couldn't see anything, is that correct?
Folks who are able to stream through the YouTube live stream are able to view the meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay, so written communications, we have plenty from Jerry So and Cynthia Chan on 118, Anya Miller of 119, Kaylee Coughlin of 126, Barbara Kelsey, 128, Sierra Club comment regarding climate action, a top city priority this year. Dana Dilworth, comments on the rail yard. Laurie Borg, safe storage ordinance. Calvin Lee, bringing awareness. Grant Palmer, Jefferson Union High School District. Dana Dilworth, comments on the OUSM. And Dana Dilworth again on the Gladys sale. So now we can move on to item 10, oral communications number 2. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak in oral communications number 2?
Are there any attendees who would like to make public comment at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Madam Mayor, I have received no written correspondences or interest for the members of the public making public comment.
Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to item 11, adjournment to the meeting of March 4th. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.